Hi ladies, welcome back. Now I know a lot of you ladies are very keen gardeners, and a lot of you probably have rose bushes at this time of the year that you need to prune shortly maybe. I don't have a rose bush so I don't know, but it won't be far away. And sometimes when we are using our gardening gloves, that's fine, but the gardening gloves stop at the wrong place. So here's a garden glove and it stops here. We go out and garden for the day and then we have scratches all up our arm, and it's not a good look. And sometimes with roses you can get infected by their little sharp thingies, thorns. So a friend of mine came up with a great idea, and we have put some really nice fabric on the end of our gloves so that when we're gardening we won't get completely cut up all up our arm and get scratches. So these are just some gloves we picked up, and there was 3 in a pack. They're only $15. You can choose whatever gloves you like, but we're going to add a gardening sleeve to them. So you can completely do this on the overlocker, but I'm actually just going to do it on the sewing machine because not all of you have got overlockers. So in your notes are the measurements for your gardening sleeve, and you're going to fold it in half and put your right side to right side. Then you're just going to stitch down. Just a 1 centimeter seam is fine, and just use straight stitching. You're going to go forward and reverse on your machine. Put your needle stop down function on if you've got one, because then your needle's going to go in the work and not have so much movement. And then you're just going to go sew to the bottom of your work, and you're going to reverse at the other end. If you have an overlocker, you can simply just sew that seam with your overlocker. Okay, then I'm going to cut my thread there. Yep, and cut my thread there. And because these will possibly, will they be washed? Possibly. You can overlock that edge. Now a lot of you ladies have got what's called a single overlock stitch on your machine, and a lot of you ladies will have a double overlock stitch machine. Because this is just gardening gloves, I think a single overlock is fine. You can put on a proper overlock foot, which is foot number 2, but for something quick and easy like this, you could leave on your standard foot and just put the correct stitch on and run down the side of your fabric. So you don't always have to jump on your overlocker if you just want to do something quick on your sewing machine, but you could just about do all of this on your overlocker if you wanted to. Alright, but we're going to do it all by machine today for you ladies that don't have an overlocker. Cut your thread, and that is single overlocked. Now what you're going to do, there is your side seam there, or your back seam, and you're going to put a mark here with a pin so you have your halfway. Then you're going to open it up and you're going to put your pin to your seam, and you're going to put another pin here, and then you're going to put another pin here. So you've got 4 quarters. Okay? This seam, rather than having an opened out seam I've stitched together, I'll just give it a quick press so it goes one way. I don't need to press them, I don't need to do them separately and press them open. It's not a garment, just so that's nice and tidy. And then I get my glove, and I'm going to halve and quarter this as well. So I'm going to put pin to pin when I join them together, and then I'll get a nice even gather. Pin to pin, open it up, and pin to pin. Now if you are going to stitch it on an overlocker, you want to put your blade away so that you don't cut the elasticity of your gloves, because otherwise you won't be able to stretch them over your wrist. So I'm going to pop my little glove inside, and this being the top and this being the back, the front and the back, I'm going to put the seam to the back. So I'm going to slip my glove inside here, And my gloves will, oops, I've lost a pin. My gloves will never get dirty because I don't do much gardening. You can ask my husband. I don't like to get my nails dirty. Maybe with a gardening glove I haven't got any excuse anymore. So you're going to put the first pin at your back seam there. You're going to follow around. Your second pin you're going to put here, transfer that one, go through that one and take it out. So you've got one pin, two pins. Your next pin is going to line up with your third pin, take it out, put it through once and twice to hold, take it out, and then your next pin will go to here and you're going to take it out and put it through twice. Then there won't be any problem with it going. Now I'm going to do a small zigzag stitch and I'm going to take off my sew plate there, and I'm going to be stitching this by stretching it from pin to pin. So I want to put it around here, if it will go, perfect. So I'm going to go onto here and I'm just going to do a foot width seam because it doesn't need to be very wide. Now when you're working with your stretch, like I said, you want to put on a small zigzag. You really don't need a heavy stitch. So I'm going to make my width about 1.8 and my length about 1.8 to make it easy. So 1.8 wide and 1.8 long. Make sure your needle stop down functions on. Now the reason why you do that, when you're sewing a cotton fabric with a stretch fabric, when you stop sewing to adjust it, your needle will be down in the work and it will save it from moving. So I've put my needle down, I can take my first pin out, and remember to use your knee control to lift your foot up and down. Make sure you can see all your raw edges together, and I'm going to start sewing and then I'm going to reverse. Needle stop down. I told the machine but I didn't do it. It doesn't have voice recognition. I wish it did some days, and I could just tell it to sew my clothes. So I'm ready to start and I'm stretching it from my first pin where I've started to my second pin, and I'm just holding it at the back and I'm just sewing my foot width and sewing all the way around the edge. Alright, and pulling it as I go. Needle down, take your next pin out, lift up and rearrange, and away you go. So on an overlocker, you wouldn't be able to do this. You'd have to turn it up the other way to stitch it. But on a sewing machine, you can get it around that arm nicely. All right. Needle down, and then for my last one, just lift it up, rearrange it, pull it around so it's nice and flat, and then stitch it to meet where you were. Now overlap it and reverse. So stitch it around and reverse it, and then you can push your locking off button and it will lock off in one place. Love that button. Now I would want to completely finish that off perfectly because of washing. So I would put back on my single overlock stitch and I would run around the overlock stitch around the edge. And the reason why I would do that is because cotton fabric is brilliant, but it will fray, and you want to make sure that you don't have anything falling apart in the years to come. But isn't it a wonderful idea? I reckon it's great. So just stitch around there with your overlock stitch, or whip around with your overlocker. So quick to just do it anyway. Cut your threads and your other little tails, and then pull your glove through will be the easiest way, and you have got a really cool sleeve on your glove, and it was quick and easy. Now around the top, I want to top stitch it. So you can do one of two things. You can just iron it once and iron it twice and top stitch it, or you can overlock around it and just turn it up once. I'm going to turn it up twice. So I'm just going to iron it up, just a really nice little thing. Make sure that your seam is facing the same way as it did inside, so it'll sit nice and flat. So I'm turning it up, what, 1 centimetre? And of course you ladies will be so good that you'll measure it with a ruler. I have a pretty straight eye, but also it's a gardening glove. It's okay. But your machine will stitch it nice and straight, and nobody will ever know if you didn't press it up perfectly. But see, look, that's perfect. So I'm turning it up once and pressing it, and you girls will roll it up beautifully. Then I'm going to turn it up again. You know, we don't need to make things hard. We can make things very quick and easy. And I do believe if you make this for any gardener, they'll be so happy, because anybody would be happy to have an extended garden glove so they don't get scratched. And I think even just hiring a gardener sounds better. Right, can tell I like sewing better than gardening. So now I've got my glove on the right way, and I'm just going to run it around my arm of my foot, of my machine, and underneath my presser foot. And I'm going to sit my foot along the edge of the fabric, but this time I'm going to move my needle position far left. Okay, so my needle position's far left. I'm going to get a really nice top stitch. Now whenever I'm top stitching, I make sure I lengthen my stitch length out to 3, because these beautiful Berninas are set on 2 length from Switzerland, so we want to make sure we're going to lengthen it out to 3. We get a longer stitch and we're top stitching. So you can do one of two things. Remember, when you start, you can either use your lock off button, push your lock off button, it will lock in one place, or you can go forward and reverse. So I've locked that off, I don't need to worry. And then just run it around, and you're watching the side of your foot on the fold of your fabric. And remember, needle stop down is wonderful. So I can clip that thread at the beginning before I get there. And then when I come past where I started, I will overlap it, and I'm going to use my locking off button. Isn't that brilliant? 4 stitches in one place, and I have got a tidy finish. And so there, if you can see, that is just a really nice tidy finish to joining your seams. It's just locked off in one place, and there's no forward and reverse feeding. And you've got a very nice tidy finish on the inside. So cool, eh? Neat idea. So you can get loads of colours. Check these ones out. We have more fabric. There's that fabric there. And if you're into purple, you may scare away the bugs. But how pretty is that lavender one? So, you know, have a bit of fun with fabric. So there's our 3 different fabrics that we've got at the moment. Show you the different colorways, and you can have fun making those as gifts. Now if you start now, you'll get them all done for Christmas, so that's not a bad idea. Now I'm going to cut my thread, and I'm going to show you the coolest, oh actually I'll leave that thread on. I can leave this color thread on so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to show you a very, very cool way of sewing flying geese. Flying geese is a patchwork block, but the reason why I want you all to learn it is because it's so super easy, and I've been doing it for years, but this method happens to be the very best method out. So you're going to go to straight stitch, and for those that don't know the 1/4 inch feet, this is foot 37, And from the needle, when I put it on, to the side of the foot is a 1/4 inch. And so when you're doing patchwork, it is the foot you use. You don't need to buy one right this second if you're not going to get into patchwork, because I can tell you how to do it with the ordinary foot. This just makes life easier, okay? If you have a Series 7 or a Series 8 machine, Bernina have brought out a new foot, and it is still a 1/4 inch foot, but if you have a look underneath, you'll see one side is very, very wide. Now the reason why they brought this foot out, and it's called a 97 foot, is because down and under here we have a 9mm opening, okay, on the bigger machines. So we need to cover our feed dogs with a bigger foot. So what they've done is they've brought out this wonderful foot, and then they've also brought out with the foot, and it comes with it, is this wonderful sewing guide, and you'll see it on one of my other videos. And this pushes up against the foot. It's got a complete cutout for it. Oops. And it goes against the foot, and you tighten the screw, and then when you sew your 1/4 inch, you've actually got a proper little screwdriver so you can tighten it properly. And then if I want to sew my 1/4 inch seam, I butt it up against my little sewing gauge, and it's a perfect 1/4 inch seam. Bernina think of everything. So this is called the 97 foot. If you've got a machine with dual feed, you want to buy the 97D foot. So this foot will fit on a 180 Artista, it'll fit on a 200, it'll fit on a 730, and it will fit on the 7 series and the 8 series machine. Alright, so for you ladies with the bigger machines, that's the foot you want. So don't buy the small one, because this one's better for your machine. Okay, pop all the bits back in so you don't lose them, Robin. Always not putting things away. And they're about $69. So that's the 97 foot, but we're just going to use the 37 foot. Now Bernina also bring out another foot, just to confuse you. And this is a 57 foot. And you can see the difference. One has got a guide down the side permanently on it, and one hasn't. If you still have trouble sewing straight, this will help you, because you can butt the fabric against the guide and it will help you sew nice and even 1/4 inch seams. Okay, so that is available as well for all the machines. Even the older machines can have a 37 or a 57. So I'm going to pop the 37 on today, because I should be able to sew straight after all these years. And I'm going to show you a wonderful, wonderful method of making flying geese. Now my skirt I'm wearing, I'm going to show you right now actually while I think of it, because this fabric arrived in at work, which I absolutely fell in love with, and it's got roses on and little patterns like fabric. So I fell in love with that one, and then I found this one and I had to have that as well. So I was going to do flying geese and I ran out of time, so I've done a border. So what I've done is I've made my skirt out of my main fabric, and I am going to lift this up so you can see, and I have sewn a 1-inch strip of black fabric and my border of my tape measure fabric, and I've cheated, so I'm going to show you. All I've done to hem my garment is I've done a 2.5-inch strip of fabric and folded it in half and overlocked it on to form my hem. So it's nice and easy. But I am going to do one with flying geese. And I ran out of time, but I'm going to make a blouse out of this fabric. So I've got a whole sewing thing happening. I think it's really, really, really cute. So that's what I was planning on, and it didn't happen quite, but I'm going to show you how to make the flying geese. So next month you will see my flying goose skirt. So what do you start off with? The first thing you're going to do is put your sew table back on. Now I'm going to show you how to stop wasting all of this thread, okay, in a second. So the first thing you want to do is you want to cut out your square of fabric, and this is 5 3/4 inch square. So I'm going to do poo geckos, no geese, poo geckos. Then you're going to cut out 4 squares, and these are going to be 3 1/8. All right. So what you do is you lay down your poo geckos or your square. You lay one of your corners right side to right side. You lay your other square right side to right side, and I'll lift this up so you can see it. And you're going to get your ruler and your charcoal liner, and you're going to lay your ruler right across from point to point, just before the point, so you can make sure you draw on the point. And you're going to use your charcoal liner and you're going to draw down here. Now if your charcoal liner doesn't work, do you know what? Turn it around, because it only works one way. How's that for a bit of trivia? So a charcoal liner can't work both ways. It can't work backwards because it has a little wheel on it and it can only go one way. Alright, so make sure you use it that one way. Now I want you to put maybe 2 pins in here. So 1 in there and 1 in here. And now I'll lift up and show you what you've done. So you've got a chalk mark through the middle. You've got your 2 squares like that. Turn your work over and you're going to sew a straight stitch, making sure your overlap square is on top. You're going to sew a straight stitch through the middle. Now, to stop wasting all this thread, you're going to put on a thread saver. Now a thread saver is simply a piece of, oh here we are, piece of fabric. So look, a little square of fabric. And what you do, look at these, that's all they are. What you do is you start off and you sew on your thread saver, and this is going to stop you wasting thread. So let's get rid of that. Okay, now, you know, sometimes when you start to sew and you're starting from a point or a very sheer fabric, your needle wants to take and eat that fabric and put it down to the bottom of your machine. With a thread saver, that won't happen. So I can sew right in that point because I've already got tension on my machine, and it will stop it from eating my fabric. So I just butt this up to my thread saver and I keep on sewing. And remember, needle stop down functions on. It's on straight sewing, and I've got my 1/4 inch foot on, which I don't need at this stage, but you will need it in a minute. And you sew up to your needle, take your needle out, and you keep sewing right through your points, and you need to be accurate. Now when you get to the bottom of your point, make sure it's nice and even. So when you get to the bottom here, you put your other little thread saver underneath and you start sewing, and you now have got that ready for your next one. So cut and keep this for the next one. Now you have got your straight sewing stitch all the way through, holding your 2 bits of fabric together. Now what you're going to do is you're going to do a 1/4 inch seam on this side and a 1/4 inch seam on this side. Okay? So remember, you've got your thread saver on and you're just going to straight stitch. And you're watching to make sure you go nice and even. And you go down one side, and this foot is a 1/4 inch on both sides. Oh, thread saver, nearly forgot. Clip and clip. And now you're going to go down the other side. And you can have plenty of those lying around. You don't just have to use the 2. And I heard a good idea today. If you want to piece small squares together, do it and use them as your thread saver. What a great idea. So you're actually utilizing the stitches that you're doing at the beginning and at the end. Really good idea. So get to the end, you do not reverse. When you're doing patchwork, you do not reverse. So if you've never done patchwork before, I want you all to try this. And email me your flying geese, please. I want to see them. Alright, I've now got 3 straight rows of stitching, all a 1/4 inch apart. Now I'm going to cut through those rows. Now when you're using a cutting board and a ruler and a cutter, that can be fine, but this can move a little bit. So I quite often use gloves for sewing, and a quilting glove is a really, really good idea to put on to cut with so that it grips the ruler. And then you just cut with your cutter right through the middle and then close your blade. So that's a really good idea when you're cutting a lot. So now you have got 2 pieces of fabric, okay? So I'm just going to show you with one. So now I come over to the iron and I press my flying geese, I lay it down and I press them towards my large triangle. So make sure you press them both one way up to your large triangle. Oops. And obviously with pukekos, they're going to go sideways and forwards and backwards, and it doesn't matter. Okay? So you have got 2 flying geese here and your pukekos there. So now what you do is you put your next square right side to right side, lay it all nice and even, draw your line through the middle and sew either side. So I stitch the first one down because you want it to hold really, really, really nicely. So remember, your charcoal liner only goes one way, so don't expect it to go backwards. And in fact, it'd be really good if it had a line. There's probably an arrow to show me which way it goes. All right. So lay that down, and can you see this chalk? It's brilliant. It just comes off so easily if I want it to. You can just brush it off. I love the charcoal liners. And they have refills as well. So I'm going to sew down the center. Get it up to there. Sew down the center and then sew down either side, remembering to use your thread saver. And you can already see how much thread you're saving by using it. Okay. And it's quicker. So cut, cut. And it takes a while to get used to it, I will tell you that. It takes a little while. Now I'm going to sew either side. So sew down here. And just remember to put your thread saver on. And I will show you that if you have sewn this really well, when you sew down, your stitch should end up right on that point where the 2 fabrics meet, and that's 1/4 inch. Okay? I would only show you that if it was perfect, by the way. But it's pretty foolproof. You really, really can't go wrong. So as long as you've got a nice straight seam and you go nice and slow, that will end up perfectly in the right place on the point. Thread saver. Oh, yeah. And clip and clip. Okay? Now I'm going to cut down from here to here. Okay? So I'm going to cut. I won't put my glove on for this little bit because you get the idea. And I'm going to cut through here. And then I'm going to press my 2 flying geese. So this time, you've already pressed that one. This time you're going to press that up towards your small triangle. Okay. And honestly, if you have never done these, you're going to love doing them. And if you have done them the old way, you will be very pleased to learn this method because you don't waste any fabric with this method. Now you'll notice if I turn it around, I need to trim off my tail, and this point from here to my point is 6 millimeters, and that's my next stitching line. So I'm going to cut off my point so I can show you. Always do your trimming before you start your next piece. Some people just carry on going, but I like to have a nice straight edge to work with. And then you lay it right side to right side, and you line it all up and you sew straight across your seam. So you've got your thread saver on there, and then you start sewing onto your fabric. And with a 1/4 inch seam, it's going to be perfect. It's brilliant, it's absolutely brilliant. So whoever thought it up, I have no idea, and I think it's a brilliant idea, and you need to try it because it's good fun. And you can see how beautiful the Bernina is, so straight anyway. It's just fabulous. Too easy with your needle down function and your needle stop function and everything. Now if I show you that, you can see that my stitching has crossed over right at that correct mark. That's because of the foot. When I open this up, I have got a perfect point, okay, and that is flying geese. So now I press my seams. I'll press this one upwards, up towards the top, and then from the right side up towards the top. Cute poo geckos. So this one, because we're using the poo geckos, some of them are going to be this way, some of them are going to be that way, some of them are going to be a different way. Now what I've done, I saw a great idea on the internet, and I have made one of the placemats that I saw. Well, I've started it, and I think this is cool. So that is 5 flying geese, a 1-inch strip of fabric, and a 1.5 strip of fabric on the side, and then I can quilt it. So you'll see that finish next month. And if you look at my skirt and look at this, it's actually the same, kind of the same idea. So I might make a skirt with flying geese around the bottom because I think it's really, really nice out of a fabric, and that border looks really, really good. So this is, even though this is going to be a placemat, it would be very, very nice on a garment. So that is flying geese, and I think it's so cool. Now, I've got one more thing to tell you about that you are going to absolutely love. 2 more things, actually. One is freezer paper, which I've told you about before with foundation piecing. But also, I want to tell you how you can print on fabric with it, okay? So, we're going to have a quick break, and then I'm going to come back and tell you how to print off your printer onto freezer paper. So I'll see you soon.